Warning, this video may contain spoilers for late parts in the game. If you plan on playing this at some point, turn back now. You have been warned.
Black Samurai!
Welcome to a game that I finally beat, weirdly, as I took a super long break from it due to a boss that was seemingly pretty hard. When I picked it back up, I instantly beat the boss, so I don't know what the hell was going on, but welcome to Afro Samurai. There's not much change from the anime in this game, just a couple segments to make the game a bit longer and to make more sense, due to not playing as other characters and just as Afro. One factor that completely blew me away, and it's that the entire soundtrack was composed by RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. As you can hear, this shit is real damn good. Other than this, I had a pretty decent time with the game, but let's get to the basics. While you would think this game mostly focuses on fighting, and of course it does, it needed a little extra to get to those parts. Thus, we got some platforming elements that are, in my opinion, pretty bad. But let's talk about the fighting first. Like most games, you have a weaker attack in X and a stronger attack in Y. You can chain and combo these together, and you'll even get more combos to use as you level up in the game. B is used to kick, which I think breaks blocks, and RT is used to block, which you'll be needing to use especially against the bosses. LT, on the other hand, lets you go into a slow motion mode, and charging the X button and letting the edge of your blade shine will cut an enemy apart. You can also use Y to aim vertically and B to trip enemies in this mode. These are virtually one-hit kills besides the B button as long as you hit your target, as some enemies are fast and can dodge, but if you're just as fast, you can still slice them up. Killing enemies in this mode will also heal you, and it can be charged up by attacking enemies, even if they end up blocking your attacks. This is the big meat and potatoes of the game, as eventually you'll unlock a little minigame during fights called Body Part Poker, where you can collect cards by cutting off 3 of the same body part in a row, mostly just netting achievements. The platforming that I mentioned involves doing awkward and weirdly precise jumps, but also has you running up and on the side of some walls. This sounds pretty awesome, and it definitely would be if the jumps weren't so precise and buggy. For the most part, they aren't too bad, but the end section is pretty awful. The only good thing about falling is that you don't die or lose health. You just immediately get respawned, but it's still pretty damn annoying. One final bit to know is the teddy bears and the extra. The teddy bears will fully heal you, and there are usually multiple throughout a level and with bosses. The extra is just that there are crows you'll find, there being 5 per level, earning you an extra devastating skill after finding them all. The story begins with Afro right in the fray of everything before he got a hold of the number 2 headband. He goes through a village slaughtering everyone in his path before reaching the castle, where he comes in contact with Daimyo after reaching the top. They have a conversation about the headbands, with Afro saying he's looking for the number 2 and Daimyo saying it's all a farce. As Afro lands the finishing blow, he reveals that Afro's sword master is in possession of the number 2 headband. Afro goes back to his school, where he confronts his master, who says that he's just like his father, before the school is invaded by Daimyo's followers, telling Gino and Afro to save the children. This all culminates in the death of all the students besides Gino, though he commits suicide after finding them all dead, including Itsuru. This causes a fight to commence between Swordmaster and Afro for the headband, with Swordmaster saying that he wanted the cycle of death surrounding the headband to end. Afro slays his master, and a strange person appears named Ninja, encouraging him to wear the headband and begin his journey for revenge. The story then picks up with Okiku, who explains that she's dead, having only spent 7 days with Afro before she did. She was also drugging Afro and sifting through his memories, though he suddenly woke up on the 4th night. He follows her up the mountains and finds out she's working for a mysterious man who's using her to take his memories with the plans to dispose of him after. After smashing on the 5th night, she reveals that she's an assassin for the cult of the Empty Seven on the 6th night. She tells Afro where he can find the nest of drone assassins that the Empty Seven are building, eventually getting inside and completely destroying the facility. The next night, Okiku's house is ambushed by more drone assassins, and Afro defeats them before one of the Empty Seven, Brother 6, attacks them, with Afro only being able to fend him off. While trying to escape on a boat, Okiku is killed by 6 and one of the other brothers, only having Ninja to keep him company now. He then has a flashback of what happened to his father, who was the number 2 at the time. He challenged the number 1, a gunslinger named Justice, who pretty easily defeated him by decapitation. Justice egging Afro on to challenge him when he's older. He ends up in Lowdown East Pass in an attempt to get to Mount Shumi. This segment mostly just involves Afro murdering a whole bunch of assassins that the Empty Seven sent at him, eventually fighting 6 and 2, whose own plan ends up working against them, getting themselves buried in rubble. He ends up in a snowy mountain passage where he encounters a doppelganger of himself. After killing him and advancing further, a robot appears and flies Afro up high into the sky, starting a pretty amazing fight between the two of them in the sky. Afro winning and getting closer to his final destination. On his way, he comes face to face with a double sword wielding man in a bear hat who disappears multiple times before Afro cuts off the mask and reveals that it's Gino, who has some sort of life support system on his head. Eventually, an explosion goes off and Gino disappears. Afro enters a hole in the mountain which leads to the Empty Seven's base, one by one killing 5 of the 6 brothers pretty horrifically in blade pits before getting stopped by some of the drone assassins. Afro then appears at his father's grave and where he killed Swordmaster before being confronted by Ninja, making fun of him for all the friends he doesn't have due to them being dead. Ninja fighting Afro in full force by creating endless clones. After defeating him, he tells Afro that he had been carrying all of his emotions for him, and that it's time for Afro to carry the weight of it all again, before vanishing. Afro then appears before a throne with Justice in it, finding out that he's been dead for ages. That's, of course, before he fights a mental interpretation of Justice, constantly taunting Afro for letting his need for vengeance to make Justice a god in his eyes. Eventually, Afro is able to cut him down, waking and taking the number 1 headband in one hand and the number 2 headband in the other, while thinking of all the people who died for these things, and lets them blow into the wind, hoping to end the cycle that these headbands caused for good. The fighting in this game is pretty damn great, especially being able to precisely cut off specific body parts, I think being one of, if not the first game to do so. Nothing crazy amazing, but a pretty fine example of hacking and slashing your way through hordes of enemies. I was super surprised to find that the combat was actually designed by Monty Ohm as a fun fact for everyone. Also, like I mentioned before, the soundtrack for this game is pure goddamn fire. The last thing I really liked was how the game looks. It used cel shading and I think it really stood the test of time. Coming out in 2009 but still looking absolutely fantastic. I do have to say though that the platforming is complete ass. Everything is a little too precise and there's so many glitches in the later segments that if you make a mistake, it can become really annoying. I've said before, I don't mind glitches too much, but I guess I should clarify that glitches that cause you to die or get set backwards constantly are pretty annoying, but ones that show behind the scenes aspects are pretty cool to me. This is a case of the former. Pretty much everything else is fine though, so I don't know why these sections are so bad compared to the rest of the game. Again, for the most part, this game is just a retelling of the anime, so I wouldn't blame you if you just decided to watch that instead, but you will definitely be missing out on some pretty great music, and for the most part, fun gameplay where you absolutely slaughter your enemies, with Ninja providing some hilarious and at times meta dialogue that I didn't really mention much of in this review. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the review, and see you next video.